My name's Lauren Sullivan, and my project is titled Beyond the War, a project in Afghanistan. And the three questions I kind of had going into researching this was what's it like to be a woman in the country? Because I'd heard it wasn't great, and I kind of wanted to elaborate on that. I want to know how the war affects the people and the country as a whole. And I also want to know more about their culture and traditions because I feel like most people only focus on the war that's going on there. So the geography of the area, it's located in Asia, and it's actually at a meeting point of Central Asia, the Middle East, the Far East, and the subcontinent India. So they get a lot of influence from all four places. It's about the size of Texas. It's a pretty small country. Um, the One of their natural resources is lapis lazuli, which is a blue gemstone, and so that's quite abundant in the area. It's very mountainous, and they have snow caps on the mountains. So when the snow melts, it runs off and creates rivers that run through the valleys, and that is good because the majority of the people live in the valleys, and they farm and raise cattle there. So the river is a good thing. Um, there are a lot of dry deserts, as seen on the news, and so it's quite hot and dry there in the summers, and then the winters are really cold. The political history is Ahmad Shah Durrani conquered the land, and he created the last Afghan empire in the mid 1700s. Then they were involved in the Great Game, which is kind of a power struggle between Great Britain and Russia. And so they were invaded by Great Britain twice during the Anglo-Afghan Wars. And then during the third, they finally won their independence from Britain. They instated democracy, and when the leader was not present for a week or two, his cousin actually held a coup, and it became a Republican government. Then the Communist People's Democratic Party of Afghanistan took over, and there was a civil war between the two sides. And the Soviets actually backed the Communist People's Democratic Party of Afghanistan, and they invaded to help them. After that, the Taliban took over, and they reigned with terror. They held massacres to establish power and kind of dominancy. Um, During 9/11, they kind of supported Al Qaeda, and after the U.S. demanded bin Laden was handed over, who was the leader of Al Qaeda, they said no, and so they had a lot of countries intervene. And there is a UN sponsored Bonn conference 2001, and it led to a democratic government for Afghanistan. Religion is a large part of Afghanistan life. 99.7% of the population is made up by Sunni and Shia Muslims, and I think 90% are Sunni and about 10% are Shia. Obviously, those are rounded. Um, there's a few small residual communities. There's Christianity, Judaism. There's a few others, Buddhism, Hinduism, but Islam is definitely the dominant religion. The Islamic doctrine tends to govern most aspects of people who live in Afghanistan's life. So there's a really strong societal pressure to adhere to the teachings of Islam. And many people say it's kind of an oppressive form of government because they can utilize religious principles to target people. And one example of this is journalism. If they publish something in the news or anything that the leaders believe is not really going along with the principles of Islam, they can charge you for blasphemy and they could kill you. They could send you to the death penalty. And women are, for a lot of the same reason, women are forced to cover up from head to toe. And then the Taliban also targets Shia Muslims, which are the minority of the Islam population, and they get targeted by the Taliban when their worship ceremonies will get interrupted and the Taliban will have a terrorism attack on them. So gender roles in Afghanistan. So it is actually the worst country to be a woman ranked in the world. 2/3 of the women are uneducated. 70 to 80% of women are forced into marriages. 90% of them experience domestic abuse, and 80% of suicides are committed by female women. So it's very, very hard to be a woman in Afghanistan. You're not really allowed to do much. The definition of a successful woman is a woman who went from child to bride to mother of mostly sons and then a grandmother. Like it's better to have sons. Women are treated absolutely horribly. The violence against women is horrible, and they are expected to kind of stay home. They're not allowed to make eye contact or address men directly. As you can see, the woman in the picture are wearing a face covering that like you couldn't see their eyes in. And then for men are pressured to fit masculine stereotypes, and people have actually done research into the war, and because these men have grown up in the war for the last 30 years, they tend to kind of be in survival mode more, and so they have more aggressive instincts than, say, someone in America or somewhere where war hasn't really been fought in our country. And so it's made them more aggressive, and it leads to domestic abuse. It leads to not good things. Men are the breadwinners. There's really no such thing as a woman in the workforce there. And men are kind of supposed to like control their wives and children. And when they talk about them, they're not to use their names. They're kind of to say like my wife, my children. It's very just derogatory the way they talk about women. So tradition and culture. So they, like I said in the previous slides, they have influence from the 4 different kind of places where they meet up at. And so they get a lot of traditions from there. Tea is drunk frequently there, multiple times a day. That is also from Great Britain's influence earlier. And shoes are removed before entering the house. Hospitality is a huge deal for them, and that kind of comes from Islam principles. They have 2 official languages, which are Pashto and Dari. And there are also a few like sub-languages that are spoken that are common, but those are the 2 official languages. And so food is typically eaten on large cushions, which are called toshak, and they eat at a low table called a sandali. And they have kind of like one big serving platter in the middle, and you can only eat with your right hand. You're not allowed to eat with your left. And they don't use utensils. They just kind of like scoop it up and eat it. But they also have very distinguishable music because of the influence from all 4 areas combined sounds different than most music. And women, like I had said before, women aren't really allowed to address men. And then a little fun fact was green wrapping paper in Afghanistan actually means good luck for weddings. So, yeah. And then these are my sources. So